At the end of the day, you only have 90 minutes, so a lot of this information is very disjointed. So what I did in the computer in the front was I started recording it. So recording my conversations, recording the computer screen. What I'll do is I'm going to have you guys send me an email or check with the GPP people. Send me an email. I'll send you a link to the YouTube conversation. I'll put it up on YouTube, so you guys can watch it, pause it, rewind it, however it is you guys want. So if you're not familiar with me, I do a lot of marketing, I do a lot of workshop training, and while training, I sound very much like national radio. Like I'm very monotone. This is what we're going to do. Live, it's like this, like you want to like, right? This is more of an experience. It's kind of like Blue Man. So what you want to do is just kind of relax and just kind of take it all in. So I'll spend a lot of time kind of switching between the two. Now, just out of curiosity, how many of you guys are using Lightroom already? Raise your hands if you are. How many of you guys are experts in using Lightroom? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Right? Right, experts in Photoshop? Right? Okay, pretty good at Photoshop. We're going to cover a little bit of both. We're going to talk a little bit about workload. Now, these are some general things that I think you should keep in mind when you're working with software. We're going to gloss all that over. We have a couple of other classes we're doing throughout the week that hopefully you guys are joining us with. Another big thing, Nikon shooters, raise your hand. Shoot Nikon, Canon shooters, raise your hand. Sony shooters, raise your hand. Fuji shooters, raise your hand. PC users, raise your hands. Mac users, raise your hands. All right? iPhone users, raise your hands. This is the calisthenics portion of the class. It's just to get people to do stuff. There is a couple of other programming notes that I want to tell you about. There is a Pajero, the car, a Pajero, license plate 94535. They're going to take it, or it's on fire or something. Oh, that's fine. Okay. Never mind. They put it out. The other thing that I want to tell you guys about thinking. So, I tend to just keep a constant drip of caffeine, like Coke, Red Bull, and coffee. And then I used to have a paramedic follow me, just in case the heart stopped. So I talk about East versus Mac a lot. Well, not versus, but just why you use PC, why you use Mac. There is a special class, we just announced it. Like, Microsoft is sponsoring the conference, and I'm a huge PC advocate. Like, a lot of times I tell people, I'm like, there is probably two incredibly small reasons why I use a Mac. It has to do with Windows font smoothing and good graphics against full-color processing, full-color rips for publishing of books, and for variable bit rate encoding versus constant bit rate encoding for programmers on the PC side. If none of that stuff makes sense to you, there's absolutely zero difference between a Mac and PC. And I think that what happens is there's this giant myth about why you use one versus using another. So I was extremely happy to see that Microsoft is out here. They want to be able to kind of evangelize this on the surface because I did a lot of stuff with it. So there's a free class that's coming out from 5 to 6:30, February 15th. They have classes. If you guys want to come, that is going to be a class that I'm going to be doing where we're basically talking about from capture to output. It's called photography on the go. So if you have nothing to do, 5 to 6:30, that's what I'm going to check out. Basically, a little bit more of this stuff that we're doing. So that's it. Let's get into talk about Lightroom. What are we talking about Lightroom? Lightroom is a program that allows you to stay organized. How many of you guys use Lightroom mobile? Just out of curiosity. Right? Like nobody. I don't know why. We're going to figure that out. I'll start from the very, very top when it comes to the organization of Lightroom. Let's see. This is my Lightroom collection. I'm going to tell you, do as I say, not as I do. Because I'm going to start it up and then I'm going to create a brand new collection. The reason that I want to create a brand new collection is because I want you guys to be able to see what something looks like from the very, very get-go. How do you set yourself up from the very, very beginning? For example, I just finished importing onto this computer the better part of 110 gigs of, about 110 gigs of information that I need to go over for a client of mine. They want me to take a look at some pictures and do some stuff. So I have those somewhere over here. Let me see. Yeah, so I just put this in here just to show you guys. So this is 111 gigs, right? So that's one project that I'm working on the side. The reason that I want to point that stuff out, I tend to get very nerdy also. I'm going to tell you guys ahead of time. I'm a very nerdy individual about this stuff. So my computer has about 212 gigs free. 112 of that is a project that I just onboarded last night. So on average, I probably run around 300 gigs free on my machine in order for me to do work. However, if you were to take a look at my Lightroom catalog to date has 255,828 images. That's a pretty large catalog. However, I have over 300 gigs on my laptop free. I don't know about you guys, but when you guys start using Lightroom, you're like, this is awesome. Import, ingest, import, ingest, import, ingest. And about 6 months later, you're like, I have no idea where all of my pictures are. Like, I don't know what folder they're in. I don't know what collection there is. My hard drive's full. The removable drive that I use is full. This sucks, right? So I'm doing a class that talks about this kind of stuff. So the reason that I wanted to do this from the very beginning was because I wanted to show you guys what it looks like right off the bat. We start with a brand new catalog. I'll kind of walk you guys through the experience. It's not hard. It's just, you just have to be a little anal about stuff. So everybody cool with that? The other thing that I want to know, I tend to do a lot of polling when we start. How many of you guys use collections? Raise your hands. Like 5 of you. Collection sets? Nope. Kind of, sort of. How many people understand the difference between a collection and a collection set? Collection sets can be nested. Collections cannot have collections inside of them. People are like, I'm leaving in the first grade. All of that stuff is actually very easy to set up, just nobody talks about it. I'm the guy that talks about the things that nobody talks about. So let's go ahead and start from the very beginning. I'm going to create a brand new catalog. So the catalog that I'm going to create, I'm going to call Bacon and Eggs. Right? You'll notice it doesn't really matter what you call this thing. It's just the name of the catalog that you're working with. So I'll go ahead and I'll click on Create, and I'll click on Skip for that. The catalog is basically the notebook. How many people understand what a Lightroom catalog does? Think of this way. Imagine that we're in a house, right? Where you're sitting in a house, and I turn around and knock on the door. And knock on the door, you're like, hey, what's going on, everybody? And then listen, what's your name? So if I'm thinking this, I got some pictures here that I brought for you. And I bring you a shoebox, and I give him a shoebox full of pictures. And he goes, okay, cool, thanks, man. He shuts the door, and he grabs the shoebox, and he's like, where am I going to put this thing? I don't know where to put it. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go into my bedroom. In the bedroom, I have a dresser, and I'm going to put the pictures in the top drawer of the dresser. Cool. Now I know where they are. But I'm very familiar, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the notebook, and I'm going to write down lots of pictures that came from March today are on the top drawer of the dresser. Now, what's your name? Sorry. So I'm just looking at these, I said, hey, listen, I got lots of pictures for you. Give it to him. And he goes, and he's like, okay, cool. That area is full. I don't know where to put this other. We don't put the second drawer is empty. So he grabs the box and puts the box in the second drawer. He just won't forget it. So he turns around and writes it down in his notebook. And all of a sudden, I come back and I go, hey, listen, I have another box. I'm going to give you another box of pictures. And he turns around and he goes, the drawer is full. You know what? I saw in the bathroom. Look back. In the bathroom, I don't know why you do that, but you go to the bathroom, you put the box inside the bathroom, and you write down that you put the box in the bathroom. Now, I'm bored one day. I go to the box in the bathroom, and I organize the pictures by color. Like, looks better over here, looks better over there. I need to remember that's what I did, so it's a little bit, I write that down as well. So everybody get the analogy so far. That notebook is monitoring the location of those pictures, what pictures you have, and what you've done with those pictures. That is your Lightroom catalog. It is a file that sits on your computer over here you'll notice there's a folder called Bacon and Eggs. Inside of here, there's a folder called .lrcat, or file called .lrcat. That is the notebook. All that does is it monitors the location of the pictures and what you have done to those pictures. Is everybody cool with that? It is not your pictures. I cannot tell you how many times I tell people are like, I went and I did a catalog backup, I'm totally fine. I deleted everything, totally good. And you're like, no, you're not. You're in really bad shape right now. Because what you've done is you've taken your information and you basically said, I'm going to burn the house down, but I got a copy of the notebook. Right? So your notebook is just monitoring where you are, what pictures, where the locations are, and what you've done to them. At any point in time, if somebody breaks into your house and grabs the pictures in the bathroom and puts them in the kitchen, you walk into your house with your notebook and you're like, I don't know where the pictures are. I have no idea. Your notebook does not show that somebody came in and moved your pictures. Is everybody okay with that analogy? If you can keep that in your head as to how it works, I can guarantee you can clean up a lot of your Lightroom workflow. Because all it is about going back to that notebook and organizing that notebook. That notebook is key. So what I have done here, just to get us up and running, is I've created a notebook that's empty. And what I'm going to do to that is I'm going to add information to that notebook. Now, I can do this a couple of different ways. I can grab a card and stick a card onto the computer, and it'll open things up. Or if you already have a notebook, I can just grab the information and I can take a folder and I can single click on a folder and just drag it inside of the library module. Why is this helpful? It's helpful because what this will let you do is it will let you take an existing library. So let's say that you want to start from scratch. You can just do file, new catalog, you have all these folders in a different location. You turn around and go, okay, cool. You can just, rather than import or return it to something else, you can just grab the folder, leave exactly where it is. Just drag the folder into your library, and you get these dialogues. It is the equivalent of going into your house, you see the folder in the bathroom, pictures, and all you're doing is writing it out. You're grabbing it and you're dragging it and importing it in. Now, I like having that explanation at the very beginning because I think that part is important for people to understand. The second thing that I think is important for people to understand here is this what you do here at the very top, right? Things like build previews, things on collections, things on file naming. So I tend to have a very specific way that I rename pictures. We talk about that in one of the later classes. Build previews, I can tell you that right off the bat, one of the things that you should keep in mind is between minimal and one-to-one are probably the ones that you're going to be using the most, right? The differences between the two, why you would care one way or another. Minimal, when you import, right off the bat, it's making the smallest thumbnail that you can possibly see. You'll see that in a small grid. We keep losing the HDMI. Please come back, HDMI. Okay. So, yeah, if it does that again, somebody just wave up a peace sign, and I'll know to turn around. But when you import right off the bat, it imports really fast and it creates this thumbnail. I don't know about you guys, but have you ever noticed, like, you see the grid of thumbnails, and when you double click on it, it goes loading, 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 and then it shows you the picture? Okay. When in doubt, I usually start doing this. I start unplugging stuff. Yeah, it could be. All right. So in the meantime, we could probably start taking a look at a secondary option. I So what we'll do is you'll double click on it and it just pops up and it just goes loading, 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 and you wait. And you're like, oh, this is cool. And then you want to see if the picture's actually sharp and you zoom in and it goes loading, 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 loading. It's the slowest possible loading ever. And then it finally shows you the picture. What it's doing is when you import from the very tab, it embeds the JPEG preview onto the file. That's really small. That's usually used for just thumbnails. When you double click to see it in the full size, it needs to re-render from the thumbnail. That's usually when it renders and it creates a standard. And then whenever you're going to zoom in, it needs to create a 100% thumbnail. So it re-renders a one-to-one. Now, why is that important? Imagine you're shooting a wedding, you're doing a hot shoot, you're doing something like that. You don't want to sit there and be like, next, loading, 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 it's blurry. Next, loading, loading, loading. There's no time. So what I tell people is right off the bat, when you import, it may take longer during the initial import, but walk away from it and set it to 1-1. By setting it to 1-1, it will reload those giant thumbnails. And then the next time that you go back and you take a look at verticality, you can just hit next, next. It's still pretty slow, but it's not as slow as if you're trying to re-render from a completely standard from a basic thumbnail. If it's not that important to you, and you just want to be able to import right off the bat, start with minimum. And then you can just go through that process. If I were completely honest, if it were absolutely time critical, I'd use another program. Altogether, outside of that. There's a program called PhotoCAD that I'm a big fan of. It's like $150, and I use it for one thing to get the picture really, really fast. So I can show you guys, I think I'm going to end in the class to just how to use an external program to do coloring really fast. But beyond the support, but that's the important difference, because a lot of times people are like, it's one drop down, but that drop down can save you quite a bit of time when you're working with stuff. I never import suspected duplicates. I think that this is a giant waste of time for what we're doing right now. Add to collection, I think, is pretty cool. I rename the files. We'll talk about the strategy in one of the other classes, but it's just basically I put in descriptions and times and things like that because I tend to be very anal about it. Now, develop settings. Always tell people put in your input information, right? Name, email address. Do not put in a phone number. Don't. That kind of stuff is not important. Inside of here, under the metadata, you have a metadata preset. Add it, right? Go inside of here, create new. I wasn't going to cover it, but I'll cover it now anyway. Go to the new under the metadata preset and put in GPP, well, whatever, call it whatever you want. But inside of here, I tell people, put in copyright 2017, copyright status, copyrighted, usage terms, all rights reserved. Email rc@aboutrc.com. See that email address right there? That's the email address that you're going to send me an email to get this video. So it's easy. My name is RC. It's rc@aboutrc.com. And I'll give you guys this email. And then the URL is just my website. Inside of here, creator, address, city, state. I don't put in my address, I don't put in my city, don't put in my state. I put in my email address. I put in, do not put your phone number. For God's sake. Right? I tell people all the time, all of you guys are photographers, right? That's why you're here, right? There's absolutely zero reason why you shouldn't put your stuff online to share with people. There is absolutely zero reason why you shouldn't try to make a little bit of money on it, right? What I usually tell people, this is not a business opportunity. This is not me talking to you about anything other than the fact that I tell people, go on Flickr, flickr.com, create a profile for free, upload your pictures for free. I cannot tell you how many times I've gotten an email from people on Flickr that have said, hey man, I saw this one picture, we're thinking about using it for an ad, we're thinking about using it for a book, we're thinking about using it for this, for a news article, what's your rate? You're not gonna make rent. I'm not saying that you're gonna buy a house, I'm not saying that you're gonna buy a car, I'm not saying that you're not, but at the bare minimum, you deserve to at least feed the habit, right?
I've done that. I have a separate PayPal account, and all of that stuff goes in, and I've bought, knock on wood, a camera, a lens, a couple of Christmases. If your pictures are good enough, why not do it, right? If you're not doing anything with the pictures and you're sharing them anyway, put them up there. Do not put your phone number, because then that means that at 2 o'clock in the morning, somebody's going to be like, you don't need that. Don't do that. So just email. Now, once you've done that, you click on create, and at that point, all you have to do is just select the metadata preset from there, and you import, and you're done. Easy. We grab all of that information, we import right here, and it imports that folder. Now, once we have all of that stuff taken care of, the next thing that I want to do is I want to start working with the actual developing of the picture. Or actually, no, before the developing of the picture, let's do something else. I'm going to show you something. How many of you guys know how to be able to do culling? All right. Culling? Kind of, sort of. All right, nobody knows what I'm talking about? Okay. You've imported 33 pictures. Of those 33 pictures, do you sit around in a position and you're like, this is it? Every picture that I imported was awesome. That card's done. Ansel Adams, I'm out of here. Right? No, there's a bunch of garbage inside those pictures. There's good stuff, there's bad stuff. Your job is to figure out how to be able to grab some of that good stuff and how to be able to get rid of some of that bad stuff. So right now, what I want to do is I want to take these pictures. Oh, let me see something here real quick. Yeah, so I put them in here. So what I want to do is I want to take some of these pictures and I want to go, these are good, these are bad, and make some sort of sense out of all of it. I'm going to double click on the first picture, and I'm going to give you a series of keyboard shortcuts. I want you to remember X, P, left arrow, right arrow, Shift Tab, FF. Let's go through all of them from scratch. Actually, LL, not FF. Shift Tab. What's Shift Tab? If you hit the Tab key, it gets rid of the two panels, left and right. Shift Tab gets rid of all four of them. L is the ugly lights, right? You hit the letter L, it dims your interface. If you hit the letter L again, it turns it off entirely. So now all you're doing is looking at the picture. Yes? Exact same on the PC. All we're doing right now is we're doing three keys. X, P, left arrow, and right arrow. You're marking images that are rejects. You're marking rejects are X. Any image that you want to keep is going to be a P. And if you have no idea, you're going to hit the left arrow or the right arrow. This is almost, go back to like test taking, basics, right? So I was an ex-teacher, so I always tell people about test stuff. If you were taking a multiple choice test that were timed, one of the most essential strategies about what you're supposed to do is you go through the test, and every question that you absolutely know that is right or absolutely know that is wrong, you answer. If you know it, answer it. If you do not know it, what you're supposed to do is skip it and continue to answer all of the questions that you do know. Once you get to the end, what will happen is you will then go back to the beginning to all of the questions that you did not know, and then start working with those. So, let's save that let's get that also done. So you get back to the beginning, and then you start working on the ones that you don't know. That helps all the time. I can't tell you, one of the other things that people talk about in terms of photography is they'll talk about editing my wedding or editing my product shoot or my model shoot took me forever. Why did it take you forever? Well, it took you forever because you probably were sitting there doing this. Is it this one or this one? This one or this one? This one? And you're like, well, I'm going to shoot myself, right? This is terrible. So what happens is, let's just leave it like this until it absolutely gets really bad, and then we're going to connect to it. Okay? But what happens with that is you spend too much time working on it. So I tell people right off the bat, and then the other one is this. You'll come over here and you'll be like, well, what if I made this over here, go to my develop module, and I'll make this a little darker, a little brighter, a little bit different, and then I'm going to change this, and that's kind of what I wanted, only to find out that the picture that's next to it is the one that you really were supposed to edit. And you spend 20 minutes and you're like, this sucks. So, to eliminate that, I tell people, Shift Tab. Get rid of the interface. Your job right now is only to find the garbage or the good stuff. You hit LL, all you're doing is focusing on the picture. So you go back to the very beginning and you say to yourself, is this picture good? Is this picture bad? Or do I have a hesitation? If you have a second of a hesitation, hit the right arrow. Skip it. There's no need for you to spend any time thinking about it. If you turn around and you take a look at it and you're like, yeah, this is good, P. This is bad, X. This is bad, X. I'm not skipping. X. All you're looking for is blurry, misregistered, eyes closed, eyes looking weird. So when I'm looking at it, I'm going, yeah, X, X, P, 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 X, P, or right arrow to skip. Matter of fact, what I'll do is I use either one or two things. I'll program, if I have a Wacom tablet, I program the Wacom tablet so that the top button is P, the bottom button is X, and then I use the scroll bar to move, and I get away from the keyboard and I do this. Click, 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 click. I've taken it even further where I use this system called Palette. I don't know if they have it here in Dubai, but I'm going to talk about this in another class. I'll just show it anyway now. It's a controller, right? You take that controller, you plug it in, and you can add functions to Lightroom with it. So I'll turn around and I'm like, it's a magnet. So it's an arcade button, another arcade button, and then this is a dial. And I literally set it in front of me, and I sit there and just go, XP, XP, left arrow, XP, left arrow, XP, left arrow, XP. And then when you get to develop, you can actually use a slider, an actual physical slider, and it gets crazy. But I'll leave it up here. I leave my bag open in case anybody wants to like take a look at stuff and not take stuff. You guys could just see what I'm using. But the funniest part about all of this stuff inside of Lightroom is just to be able to get yourself disciplined enough to work on these things in a specific fashion. I can guarantee you that I can cut down your development time in half if you just follow it like this. Don't worry about anything else. XP left arrow, right arrow, XP left arrow, right arrow, XP left arrow, right arrow. As soon as you finish all of that, let's just say that from here to here, everything was P. Notice that at the very, very top over here, you have an option called text, attribute, metadata, and none. If you go to attribute, you can take your entire collection and filter it to see only the picked images, only the unranked images, or only the rejected images. Click on one of them, it shows you all of the rejected images. Click on it again and it turns it off. Click on the P, it shows you all of the picked images. Click on it again and it turns it off. My question to you now is this: what do I want to see next? What images do I want to see? The picked images, the rejected images, or the unflagged images? I'm sorry? Unflagged. Why do I need to see the picked ones? I already know that they've been picked. Why do I need to see the rejected ones? I already know that they're rejected. Go to your unflagged ones. It's like going to the end of the test and coming back to all of the pictures that have been skipped. And do the process again. Shift tab, LL, double click, make a decision. P, X, left arrow, right arrow. P, X, P, X. And when you get to the empty, you'll notice Shift Tab again brings the interface back up, L turns the lights back on. Now there's nothing. This is where you freak out. What happened? Where's all my stuff? Don't worry. You can hit the backslash key and it brings up your attributes. And the only reason that it's like that is because you're only showing the unflagged ones, which that's exactly what you want. Turn that off. Go to your pick. Those are your rejected. Those are your picked. At that point, you could make one of two decisions, right? You could highlight this, the rejected pictures, and delete them. Or you can turn around and make a collection for them as rejected images. Is everybody okay with that process so far? Does it seem okay? Questions on that so far? Now, during the import process, that's one of the reasons why I also had wanted to go in and turn around and say, remember that part in the import? It said, do not import suspected duplicates, right? If we go over here, I'm sorry, not import, make a second copy too. I told people that I leave that checked, and people are like, no, I use that for a backup. I don't like using that as a backup because what happens is this. More often than not, when you import, I import to the desktop. Every job that I take starts on the desktop. And make a second copy to, where are you going to make a second copy to? Oh, you're going to make it to a removable drive, you're going to make it somewhere else, because you want to keep a backup of it. However, we know that a lot of the pictures that we take are going to suck. They do for me. So if I do a shoot, and I have, let's say, 16 gigs of information on the shoot, of which 10 of them are going to be garbage that I'm going to go through this XMP process, why would I automatically make a copy of that garbage and move it over to a backup location? I'm just saving 10 gigs of garbage that I'm going to get rid of. So instead, I'd rather use a backup drive on my computer, import to the desktop, don't make this copy, and go through that XMP process. Because at the end of that process, I have a better representation of what I really want to back up. And this machine, or the drive that I would have used for the second backup copy, is not only backing up my second copy, but it's also backing up a computer, it's taking care of everything else for me. So it's a better representation about what it is that I want to do. But that workflow you have to get used to that workflow when you're working with that. The second thing that I would tell people from here is, if you are not deleting files, then put them inside of a collection so that you don't have to necessarily look at them. And if you are doing this from a commercial standpoint, i.e. doing this for somebody who is paying you, doesn't have to be a job, but if they're paying you, anytime that a client tells me, I want you to keep all of the deleted copies, I tell them it's going to cost you an extra $199, right? The price of a hard drive. If you're going to keep deleted copies, make it part of your workflow where you tell somebody it's going to cost you extra, because that space is space that you need. So put it on a hard drive, and then at that point, put it into a collection. Cool? Import, catalog stuff, got that part taken care of. We're gonna in the Lightroom classes, you're gonna have to forgive me, I have to take a look at a schedule. But we have a bunch of classes that we're doing on Lightroom and Photoshop. We're gonna dive into that stuff a little bit more and play with that. This is just kind of a 35,000 foot overview. You guys get a choice, right? Which way do we want to go now? Do we want to work on the develop side of it? Do we want to work on the collection side of it next? How many of you guys want to see collections first? Okay. How many of you guys want to see developing? Okay. Let's work on developing first, then we'll go to collections. Now, you're still going to have to do collections. I'm sorry, but at least you get a little bit of a break from listening to all of this stuff. Now, I'm going to grab this guy, and I'm going to bring this guy in. Let me see. I'm going to add this to the catalog. Actually, no, I'm not going to add it to the catalog. let me do this. Now take a look. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab this on the desktop. I have a develop module example, right? I'm going to grab this and I'm going to drag this into the library. The one thing that I didn't talk about in the very beginning was copy as DNG, copy, move, and add. If you are just taking a folder that sits in an initial location and you're just adding it to the Lightroom library, then you would use the option of add. If you are going to move these pictures into a new location, then I would select copy. So a lot of the times what happens is if your Lightroom catalog is messed up and you want to start from scratch, what you would do is you would fire up a new Lightroom thing, grab the folder. I don't know where all the folders are. I see this one folder over here, but I want to copy it to a new hard drive, to a new this, because I want to start from scratch, make the new catalog, find the folder wherever it is, drag it over, and then just select copy, and then your destination location is your new hard drive. Or you can move it on your own and then just add it later. Copy as DNG is something that you would normally do during the import process if you want to use DNG as a raw file format versus the standard NEF or CR2 or whatever. How many of you guys use DNG, just out of curiosity? How many of you guys have no idea as to what the difference between DNGs and RAWs are? All right. Do you guys want to know the difference? Do you care? Yes? Okay, I'll tell you the difference. This is a visual example. processing is a bit faster. So there's a bunch of other stuff that I can do that is really cool, but those are a couple of things that I think are very important. Now, let's go ahead and just talk about develop. Anybody got a bottle of water? A bottle of water, bottle of water, bottle of water, bottle of water? No? So I tend to use a bottle of water. I'm not going to drink out of it. Just, right? How many of us want to? Be kind of weird. I'm like, right? So I always tell people just when it comes to working with your information in the development model, the best analogy that I can give you guys is a bottle of water. Right? Halfway full, right? So look at all the stuff that sits inside of the bottle of water. And all happens, you have information that goes from one side to the other side. Correct? If I grab a bottle of water this way, information goes that way. If I grab a bottle of water this way, information goes that way. So as you're working with this, the goal is to make sure that your bottle is completely covered with water. Now, I'm going to move this information here, and once I have this set, I'm going to go and I want to show you some information. I'm going to double click on this one file. This is a picture that I'm working on. Now, this is your bottle of water. Right? This is all of the data as to how it sits inside of your document. If you look at different sections here, all I'm doing is moving from one file to the other file. And this information is just it's just a different bottle of water. The goal here is to have a nice even representation across the entire tonal range. Think about filling a bottle of water. If you look at some of these, you'll see that some of these do not have enough information across the entire range. There's very little information here. There's almost no information here. So it makes you go, what's up? Why do we have that kind of a problem? Ideally, I'd like to have an even distribution of information. Everybody cool with that? How do we do that? We do that by going into a picture, and inside of the picture, let's take a look at, let's say this one, right? We're going to do that by either tipping or splitting, what I tend to call tip or split. So imagine the bottle of water. If you take the bottle of water and you tip it to one side, what happens to all of the information? All of the information pushes, like water, into one side of the picture. You go this way, the information pushes to the opposite side of the picture. So exposure, by default, will turn around and do just that. It pushes the information from one side to the other side, from one side to the other side, from one side to the other side. Now, that's tipping. Splitting is contrast. By the technical definition, contrast is basically when you take something and you add more of a difference between the dark portions of the pictures and the bright portions of the pictures. If you take the dark portion of the picture and make it darker and the bright make it brighter, you've added more contrast. So it is as if you grab the center of the picture and spread it out. See, it's pulling information from the center portion of the range. So rather than worry about, well, what does it do to the quarter tones and what does it do to this one? I just tell people, forget about all that stuff. Use the simplest analogy you can. Tip or split. You push from one section to another section, or do you push from the middle and extend all the information out? Why is that important, right? Sometimes you can take a look at some pictures and you have no idea as to why it doesn't look good, right? A very non-technical way of looking at things, right? If we go over here, let me just see if I can pull something up to show you. Like, here's a perfect example. Right? Here's a picture where you're like, huh, it's just kind of meh. Like, you don't really know why it sucks. You just know it sucks. Right? So, look at your information. Say to yourself, first thing, tip or split? Anybody? How many people say tip? Raise your hand. How many people say split? Raise your hand. Okay, look. If you tip, it doesn't really kind of move any of that information, right? But if you double click, you bring it back to the beginning. But if you split it, okay, there's a little bit more information. Now look, backslash. Before, after. Before, after. The picture still sucks, but it's closer to what it is that we want. I don't like taking an overly technical way of looking at things because what happens is we sometimes don't look at things in overly technical ways. You look at it and you're like, I don't know what's wrong with it, but something's wrong with it. Later you'll realize it didn't have enough shadows, it didn't have enough highlights, you needed a little bit of more of a contrast push, but tip or split gets you where you need to go. Cool? Next example. Shadows and highlights. Once you do that, the other section that you want to work with is shadows and highlights, right? So inside of here, once we have that done, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to work on shadows and highlights. The sky is what I wanted like this, right? But if I grab my exposure and I move my exposure over to the right to show the inside of things, what happens to the sky? Overexposes, right? So rather than worrying about all of this stuff, I want to be able to have a way to grab all of the stuff and leave all of the stuff that's underexposed okay, and then the stuff that's super underexposed kind of bring it up a little bit. That's with shadows. Take a look. The important part about all of this is watch that the sky does not move. Go to your shadows. Let's try another example that you guys can see on the screen. Take a look. Before, after. Before, after. I would have thrown this picture away. I'm putting this picture on Facebook. Not bad. And all you had to do is just drag one slider out. Same situation when you're working with highlights, right? If you're looking at highlights, let's see, what's a good highlight one? This one, I think it's pretty good. Inside of here, you'll notice that this portion right here that's on the very top is messed up. I need to grab that information and I need to make sure that it's not blown out. What do we mean by blown out? If you go over here on your histogram, this histogram right here allows you to identify areas that are blown out, not blown out, blown out, not blown out. So you press and hold it, and now it's turned on all the time. If you were to print that, there would be no ink that would hit the page. That's not good. So I usually turn that on, and once I turn that on, I go to the highlights. The important part about all of this is none of this is affected. I'm going to grab that highlight slider, drag it over the left. There's the information. Double click on it. There it is blown out. Done. Now, from there, once we do all of that, right? There's before, after. Now we're missing a couple of other things. Once you get everything organized, whites and blacks are almost always what I use as cleanup, which are basically the very edges of the picture. Matter of fact, look, if you put your cursor over this, blacks, shadows, exposure, highlights, whites. If we go back to the water analogy, what is my water not covering? The whites. So what do we have to do? We have to figure out a way to be able to slide just the whites. If you come over here, grab the whites, before, after, before, after, before, after. Matter of fact, I'll show you another trick. You don't even have to use the slider. You could grab right here. See what that's doing right there? You see how that's highlighting? Not only is it telling you that it's clipping, but it's also telling you the color that it's clipping. See? There's the clipping. So now I just grab my highlights, bring my highlights down. Before, after, before, after, before, after. Cool? Okay? Picture still sucks. Gotta work on it. There's a couple problems, but I'm closer. Other things that I would add to pictures. As you move, exposure, highlights, shadows, exposure, contrast, shadow, highlights, all of that information is pulling from one portion of the picture. That happens to be the center portion of the picture, the midtones. Right? Everything comes from the middle. The middle is always affected. The middle needs love. Love for the middle portion of the picture is clarity. Clarity is mid-tone contrast. So, what is it good for? Metals, textures, hair, fur, anything that you need. Bad for kittens, babies, clouds, things like that. Right? So what will happen with this is this. You go over here to your clarity, watch the man's face. All right? So let's just go ahead and just give it some shadows, some highlights. Take a look. Facebook, National Geographic. Instagram. Right? Be very careful when you do this though. What will happen is if you do this with areas that have bokeh or out of focus areas, it tends to look really weird and the mark of something that's been doctored. So you want to do this very sparingly when you're working with this. The next thing that we would do from there is just work on vibrance and saturation. Right? Vibrance and saturation is pretty straightforward. All it is vibrance is, saturation, right? Take all the colors, move them. Fire hose red is super fire hose red when you turn it up, right? It makes no difference as to what the color looks like. Whereas vibrance is kind of like smart saturation. It says any colors that are overrepresented don't move as much. Any colors that are underrepresented move more. Any colors that are skin tones do not move as much. So notice that I can move this, and what changes more? The blues. The reds, not so much. His face doesn't turn so orange. So that's it. That's exposure, contrast in a nutshell. Nothing else. Questions, concerns, comments? Yes? Right. All right, so the question is just interesting here. The question is, what are the set of recommendations that you could make from an editing standpoint to make sure that they look good across devices as you work with different devices in earlier versions of Photoshop and later technologies change, models change, colors change, how do you justify, how do you move all that stuff? It's a great question that doesn't have a real concrete answer. For a couple of different reasons. The first of which is there is something, we'll talk about this in the lighting class later. There's something called a process version you deal with inside of lighting. Let's talk about that. Just because I want you guys to come to the other classes. I think it'd be great if you did, but I would hate to just talk about it in esoteric kind of point of view. I'd rather just show you. So take a look at this file right here. Under camera calibration, there's a section right here called process. Process shows up as 2012, right? What happens is Adobe's been learning more and more about how to be able to process the raw files. So as they learn, they come up with a formula by which to process their raw files. Those are called process versions. Inside of here, you'll notice that 2003, 2010, and 2012. Depending on how far back you go, if you go to, let's say, something like 2003, your files were probably processed with that version of 2003. If you were to take a look at your sliders for 2003, exposure, recovery, fill light, and blacks, right? Recovery and fill light are not there anymore, right? It's exposure, contrast, shadows, highlights. So this information, if you go really far back to an older file, it's going to read that, it's going to show you this information, but it won't show you shadows, highlights, exposure, contrast. So you're going to have to reprocess, and it'll try to make a calculation based on what you think. That is a limitation of how they were processing RAWs before to how they're processing now. I've had to go back and reprocess images altogether because the differences between the technology that they had then and the technology that they have now is completely different. Good in some instances because I can do more with the files now than I could then. So it could work to your advantage. In terms of color and things like that, the only thing that I could recommend is make sure that you're calibrating, make sure that you're setting everything from a color space standpoint, make sure they have a nice neutral environment. There's a class, and again, I think this one's a free class, if I'm not mistaken. Can you please check? There's a class that I'm doing on printing that I talk about it with Epson. I think it's on the 15th maybe, but they'll check. But I'm doing a class for Epson on how to be able to take stuff to print. And the printing portion of it is, yes? It's on Thursday. What time? 5 to 6:30. I'm doing a class from 5 to 6:30 on printing. Basically, how to be able to make sure that the stuff that you capture is good. We'll talk about the raw processing as well, and we'll talk about how to be able to make sure that the output looks exactly the same. And I use a lot of data color stuff. So one of the things that I have there is I'll show you just kind of a demo on how to calibrate. Make sure that you calibrate. Calibrating gives you a good baseline for which you can transfer from one computer to another. So very long answer, but I wanted to talk about it may not just be your technology, your monitors and things like that. It could be that the actual technology has evolved enough to do that, to make it very different. Anybody else? Yes?
Actually, I'm shooting both Sony and Canon.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that while the sliders work well on the photos with Canon, but for Sony, sometimes the shadows they would work. Is there something that
So the difference between Sony and Canon, in terms of the sliders, what is the most diplomatic way for me to say what I'm about to say? It's kind of like wine. Sometimes, no, the easiest way to be able to do it is just there are, cameras are like flavors, right? I tend to shoot, I grew up shooting Nikon. I've spent a couple of years shooting Canon. I've shot Sony. I'm a big fan of Fuji. All of these cameras have flavors of how they process stuff. They also have limitations of things that they can do, right? And you'll hear people talk about the latitude of a file. When they talk about the latitude of a file, what they're basically saying is how much can you push? shadows and highlights and things like that. And different sensors and different cameras will process and feel very different. Like I can look at a portfolio and be like, oh, you're shooting a Canon. And people are like, how do you know? It's like, it just has a feel to it. Nikons will have a feel to it. Sonys will have a feel to it. And they'll have that latitude range. In my opinion, I like the feel, the color out of the Canon, but anytime I try to push and pull the Canon files, I feel like they break apart. On the Nikon side, I feel like I can push and pull that file for days. Like I think that the latitude on the Nikon file is really good. However, on the 5D Mark IV, the latitude on it is so much bigger than the latitude that they had on the Mark III. So you could just be running into a spot where you might have a really good file, but the latitude for that RAW format may not be as good as your comparable camera. That's not to say that one is better than the other. That is just to say that the feel, the flavor of that one camera won't let you go as far. That was good. Just middle of the road. Anybody else? Yes. Hi. Yeah, you're good. So the question is, how do you edit to a point where, at least across phone devices, they tend to look the same? And unfortunately, the short of that is that it's really hard for you to do so. There's no real way, because it all depends on the different type of screen types that they have, right? Like Samsung, I think it has AMOLED, the OLED kind of screen type, which I think tends to shift a little blue, as opposed to the older iPhones that I think tend to be a little bit warmer. There's no real set standard on it, because I think that the screens are just differentiating so much. It's just, you have to just sit on one decision and then just go from there. I tend to not see that stuff on anything that has an extreme color shift. Like if my colors are, like this one, I know that I'm gonna get a color shift because the blues are seriously accented, the reds are seriously accented. But if I went with a treatment that was a little bit more like that, then I'm not gonna have that much of a problem. So if I need to be able to go across all of the devices, I'll tend to undercolor, so that just a slight desaturation, so that it's a little bit more consistent. It may not be what I wanted, but at least I know that there's gonna be a consistency. Any other questions? Good questions. Cool. Do we, you wanna flip over to Photoshop real quick? Talk about some Photoshop stuff? Yes. Can you make, so the question is, in Lightroom, can you make liquify changes and distortion changes? No, that's the problem. And that's one of the reasons why you have to have both when you're working with this. They are horrible about, it does not support layers, it does not support text, it does not support liquify. There are some things that you can do. You can do healing and cloning, right? So like inside of here, if we wanted to, we can do a spot heal, right? There's our healing tool. You can do a spot heal where it'll sample off of a different area, or you can drag and create a shape and then it'll sample from another area. But it won't let you distort the face. It won't let you push the face out. In that, you're going to have to move into Photoshop to be able to do some of that stuff. And it's also one of those things where I tell people that there's 90% of the stuff that you want to be able to do, you can do right in Lightroom. But the 10% that you absolutely need to do in Photoshop can only be done in Photoshop. Like right now, inside of Lightroom, you have an adjustment brush. This adjustment brush will let you do all of the same changes that you did in Lightroom: exposure, shadow, contrast, highlight, dehaze. However, I don't like using it because I feel like there's no control, as much control as the brushes that I have inside of Photoshop. So I'll almost always bring a file from Lightroom into Photoshop if I need to do any kind of work. It's just much better control. Now, what am I talking about with that? I always show this example. Anybody know Magnum, the photo collective? Magnum, right? Magnum started by Henri Cartier-Bresson and Robert Capa and all those people, the best of the best people in the world. There's an organization called Petapixel. It's a photography blog. They did this one article that talked about a guy that's a printer for Magnum. If you go online and you do a search for Magnum, I think it's Magnum printers. Petapixel Magnum printers. Just do that search as a term, and you're going to get an article about some dude who prints the slides of Magnum photographers, the best of the best in the world. And I thought it was an amazing article in one instance. What it did is it showed you very famous pictures, iconic pictures, and all of the processing that is done to those pictures in order for the print to look the way that it does. So there's the picture, there's the print. Look at the next one. There's the picture, there's all of the instructions for printing. There's the picture, there's all of the instructions for printing. Push, pull, density, push, pull, add, subtract. So when we talk about the fact that we're like, I only like to be able to take the stuff in camera, we've never done that. No one did that. Ansel Adams, like famous landscape photographer guy, one of the biggest images that he did was moonrise over Hernandez. It's a picture of just like a valley, black, white dot of a moon. There's actually like 9 different versions of that picture. There's one version where the sky almost looks like a regular afternoon sky. And you could follow that the sky, in versions of that picture, the sky gets darker and darker and darker and darker and darker until it gets completely black. Because he would always go back to the dark room and be like, well, what if you did this? Well, what if you did this? Well, what if you did this? And there's a rumor that the last one, Hernandez, he just got lazy. Like on the super dark one, got lazy in the processing or was just like, let's just try something different. And that's the one that everybody uses, the jet black one. So there's no file that doesn't get love inside of the darkroom. This is our darkroom. So you have to have that kind of level of instance. And the only way for you to do that kind of stuff, in my opinion, is in Photoshop. You can take a file, you could take a good picture, and you could turn it into a great picture inside of Photoshop. Things that I would do from that standpoint, right? So I would bring this into Photoshop, no layer masking. I think we have a layer masking class or selections and masking class. How many of you guys are good with layer masking? Right? If you're not good with layer masking, you're at a disadvantage. And the funny part about it is, it's really not all that hard. It's dead easy. In my class. No, I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to show you guys how to be able to do some of it right now. Right? What is the concept of the layer mask? The layer mask is basically, you take a layer inside of Photoshop, and inside of Photoshop, you want to limit something that you're going to do to a specific area. Right? So before, the way that we used to do it is if I used the lasso tool, I would make a lasso tool around something, and I would have a copy of it, right? So right now, I have one layer. That layer has this information that's here. Here's the layer directly underneath it. See? So there's one piece of information, there's another piece of information. Right? So it just happens to look like it's the exact same person when it sits in the exact same spot. But it actually is a collection of 2 different things. Does everybody get that concept? That's just general concept of layers in general. The problem with this was that when they started working with this, they said, well, that's kind of, it's an inefficient way for you to work with stuff, because what would happen is in order for you to be able to make these kinds of changes, you had to take all of this pixel data and duplicate it and duplicate it and duplicate it and make the file larger and larger than it needed to be. So they said, well, if you want to start doing this kind of stuff, why don't we I'm just going to make a duplicate of this layer, and I'm gonna make a selection. Why don't you take this and go to layer and then go to layer mask, and then inside of here, I'm gonna reveal the selection. Notice that now you have a selection. It sits just like it did before, but the difference is that now what you've done is you've taken that layer and you've changed that layer by hiding some sections behind a black area and showing some sections in front of a white area. This didn't really, however, solve the problem of the file size problem, but it solved the problem of editability, of being able to go back to something. Whereas, let's say that I needed this for some sort of composition, if I had just cut it out and I saved it and then I closed it, I'd have to go back and do it all over again. Whereas now, all of this information is here, it's just hidden or obstructed by this shield of black. It's almost as if somebody took a drop cloth and put a drop cloth over the layer and then cut out a hole, and you're just looking at the stuff that's inside the hole. So what we could do from here is, if black is hiding and white is showing some stuff, technically all I need to do, I'm going to show you, I'm going to hit the Option key to bring this mask up. There's the mask, right? So if I take this bit of information and I just add more white to it, I should be able to see more of the layer that's there. So I'm going to use a brush, and inside of that brush, I'm going to use a color of white. And I'm going to come over here to this mask, and I'm going to paint. So technically now, if I alt-click the mask again to show it to you, I've added to the mask, right? If I paint with black, I'm going to hit the X key to switch to black. Come back over here, and I can hide. Paint with X, I hit the letter X. Basically, the letter X is letting me swap between foreground and background. See the X and the white, the black and the white? Now, go over to black, it's going to hide. Go over to white, it's going to show. That's layer masking so far. Is everybody cool with that part? If you want to see this in more detail, go take a look at those other classes that I have. I have a selections class, I have a masking class. We talk about it in the retouching class. But this is stuff that you just can't do inside of Lightroom. Impossible for you to do. Now, inside of here, what's the other thing that I want to do? I would like to take this and go, all right, well, this is good if you want to add and remove components of effects, but it is not good in the sense that in order for me to be able to do this, what I've done is I've taken a complete copy of this and put it into another layer, and now I'm just hiding it with a mask. That's not really effective, especially not for when I want to do tonal changes or color changes. So to that, what I want to do instead is I'm going to grab this and I'm going to drag this out. And they gave you something else called an adjustment layer. And the adjustment layer is the exact same concept of what we see with the layer mask. Instead, all it is almost kind of like a lens that they put on top of something, like sunglasses on top of something. Inside of here, if you go to layer, new adjustment layer, you'll see that the new adjustment layer has things like brightness, levels, contrast, exposure, vibrance, hue set, photo filters. So these are all tonal adjustments that you could do to the picture, but these tonal adjustments, let's say for example, I'm going to use curves. I'm going to click on curves. I'm going to click OK, and inside of here, I get a curves dialog box. See? There's the curves dialog box. There's your mask. White, all white. What does that mean? It's applying it to everything. The entire concept of the layer, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this guy and I'm going to adjust the curve. How many of you guys know how to use curves? Here's the thing, you don't need to, right? Look, this tool right here is called the, I don't know what this area is, but that's the one that I want you to affect tool. Also known as the targeted adjustment tool. You click on the finger and you go, oh, this portion of the image right here, I want it to be dark. Notice that it puts a dot on the curve. Drag it down. Done. So let's just say that that's the adjustment that I want to do. Right? Take a look at the picture by itself, the full part of the picture by itself. Okay, what did it do? It did it to all of the picture. Why? Because it's in all of the mask. So I got to take that mask and I want to hide that mask altogether. What color would I use to hide that mask altogether? Black, right? Show you an easy way to do it. Having the mask selected, instead of painting, or edit fill using black, I would just go to Image, Adjustments, and under Adjustments, Invert. Command I, or Control I. Click on the mask, Control I. The effect went away. Why did the effect go away? It's hidden. The effect is still there. It's hidden in the mask. Excuse me, sorry. I tried going for the, yeah, there you go. I went for the mute button just to be on the safe side. So now it's hidden with the mask. So now, what do? Come on, you're almost there, buddy. There you go. So what do? Now we use a brush to paint back in the effect that we did with the mask. I'm going to use letter B for the brush. I'm going to use the color of white to paint in the mask. The other thing that I would do is I would drop the flow of my brush. There's the flow of 93. I'm going to drop the flow to around 15. And once the flow is dropped, I have a color of white. I can adjust the brush size. Now this is something that you can do. You probably already know how to do it, but I'll cover it anyway. You know how you have a brush size? You can go right bracket, right bracket, right bracket to make the brush big, left bracket to make it small. Don't do it this way, right? If you're on a Mac, hold on the actual control button and hold down the option key at the same time. Once you do that, holding those two together, drag to the right, makes the brush big. Drag to the left, makes it small. Big, small, big, small, big, small, big, small. If you drag it down, it makes it hard. If you drag it up, it makes it soft. It's hard, soft, big, small, big, small. If you're on a PC, it's actually easier. All you have to do is just hold on the option key and do a right click and do the exact same thing. So now you get the brush that you want, you get the color that you want, and now look. That area is darker. That area is darker. Move that there, move that there. And now, before, after, before, after, before, after. This is the mask. That is no different. It's just a digital version of that. So in this instance, we'll go back here. All right, I always tell people the bad joke, right? Like, how do you catch a unique rabbit? You sneak up on him, and you catch him. How do you catch a tame rabbit? Tame way. Right? It's a bad joke, I'm sorry. But that's all I got. Because I'll always tell people, tame way. Tame way. Sure, I want you to come to the class that I'm doing later on. We'll talk about more techniques and things like that. But if I could leave you with one thing, it's exactly what we just did. The organizational part inside of Lightroom, I think, is great. The adjustments inside of Lightroom is great. In Photoshop, if you could do this one part, that's it. Because everything else is just exactly the same for everything. You take an effect, you make an effect, you hide the effect with a mask, you use a brush with a low flow and a soft edge, and you paint back the effect in the areas that you want it. Great images are just about the individual touches to the individual spots of the pictures that you're working with. Right now, if I wanted to highlight something, it's the exact same way. Instead, though, I'm going to go down here, and you'll notice that down here, There's a black and white cookie. It's the same effects. It's just a shortcut. I'm going to go to curves. Inside of curves, I'm going to make things a little bit brighter. Once I have it brighter, there's my mask. There at the top. Command I to hide it. Inside of here, with a brush, with a color of white, with low flow, bring in some of this information right here. Take a look. Oh, too much. I went up into the wall. Switch to black. Paint right there. There's that adjustment right there. Oh, from here, I want to make a color change, a color shift. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go to Hue Sat. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to hold on the Command key or the Control key. I want to change the color of a shirt. It's changing everything else in the document. So what do? Command I, hide it with a brush, with a color of white, with low flow. Make the adjustment here. So now, oh, I need to turn around and I need to grab all of this stuff and I need to work on sharpness. Well, I could take all of these layers, and what I want to do is I want to merge them into a new layer so that I can use that as a pixel base for that. There's an option here called Layer, Merge Visible. But I'll give you a trick. If you merge visible, it's going to take all 4 of those layers and mash them into one. That is not a good idea. Instead, hold on the Option key when you're doing that, or the Alt key on PC when you're doing that. Click on Merge Visible and look at what it does. It creates a new layer that's a sum of all of the layers that sit directly underneath it. At this point, I can make a sharpening effect. I'll show you guys one of my favorite sharpening effects. Command or Control J that one layer, make a copy, filter, other, high pass. Take your high pass, slider, and this is something where I think we're going to talk about probably in the special effects, so I'll just do some of it here. We'll grab that until we see the very edges of the one document. See how you see the edges of the picture? Click OK. Take your blend mode and move it from normal, switch it over to soft light, and take a look. Before, after, before, after. I don't want it on everything. I don't want it on his face. What do? Take the whole layer. Layer, layer mask, reveal all. Now you can see everything. Take the mask with a brush, with a color of black, with low flow. Hide. Just the face. So the concepts are all exactly the same. All you're doing is grabbing that. Once we do that, all of these 2 sections could be merged. At this point, I can go into Filter, go into Liquify. One of the things that I like about what they've done with Liquify recently is that you couldn't necessarily do anything past 1400 pixels. Now you can go up to 14,000 pixels. You can actually use Liquify for landscape shots. And we'll talk about that in the processing class. But now, watch this. I don't want to necessarily, I just want to tighten everything up just a tiny bit. So I'll take my Liquify brush, I make it this big, which you couldn't do before, and then just bring his shoulder in just a tiny bit, like that. I didn't like that his shoulder was a little off. Once I do that, make this a lot smaller, and then just pull. Oh, too much. Pull. You gotta be very careful. You'll be called out for this change. This guy's gotta go back just a tiny bit. And then, oh, that's just me getting lazy. You see that? Swoop. Instead, what I would do here is, I would leave that swoop, I would click OK, And right from inside of here, I would highlight this entire area at the very top. And I would go to Edit, Fill, and I would use Content Aware so that it trails up a little bit. This was your original image. And those are your adjustments. And all of it is the exact same concept. Take an effect, make an effect, apply an effect, hide it with a mask, paint it back in. Take an adjustment, make an adjustment, hide the adjustment, take a brush, put it back in. There's tons of other stuff that you could do inside of Photoshop. But if you could do that one thing, then it's all about learning what effects that you can do, how to apply those individual effects. That's the part that makes it good. Then at that point, you would just grab that information, put that information inside of Lightroom, and then work on organization and things like that later on. How we do all of that stuff, and how we organize ourselves, and how we work with, making sure that all of this stuff is streamlined, making sure that we have access to all of those pictures, those are all of the things that we're going to talk about this week inside of GovPhoto. Thank you so much, guys, for coming by. Yes, sir. Okay, so we have another announcement of Ricardo. Okay.
Yeah, even earlier there was one about.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.